LiSTNR production.
2 months ago, I sat down with Ben Besant, the police officer who led the operation to storm the Lindt Cafe amid the notorious December 2014 siege. A terrorist took 10 customers and 8 employees hostage. After 16 hours, officers from what's called the Tactical Operations Unit, or TOU, broke into the cafe. Ben led the police operation at the scene. He was one who received the order, Tiger, 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 to storm the cafe. In my last interview, we spoke about Ben's role in the TOU and how the public is largely unaware of what we ask of the TOU team. So this week, I wanted to learn a bit more about what they do, how they're selected, and what sort of jobs they're sent to. I'm former police officer Brent Sanders, and for the past 25 years, I've dedicated myself to sharing what I've learnt on the force to the Australian public so they can better protect themselves from falling victim to crime. So with the help of some of the most respected current and former detectives and high-ranking law enforcement agents, we're going to pull back the curtain on what life is like on the force and what they've learned about how crime and criminals really work. These are real stories from real detectives. Ben, you're in the New South Wales Police for close to 20 years. You spent quite a number of years general duties. You're based out there at the Bankstown Local Area Command. You did some undercover type operation. And then for the last 13 years of your time in the job, you're in the TOU, which is the Tactical Operations Unit. This will be a unit, Ben, that some of our listeners will have heard of, but maybe not quite know where they sit and what it's all about. Could I ask you, how do you go from what you were doing to getting in the TOU, that selection process, and maybe a bit of an overview of what it is that they do within the New South Wales Police?
The public don't really know too much about the TOU, which is sort of the way the TOU like it, to be honest. Going from general duties and being at Bankstown Local Area Command for 6 years, I was in the proactive squad for a couple of years as well, doing drug work and street crime, gangs, that sort of thing. I always thought actually prior to joining the police force I'd be in the military, so the TOU definitely ticks that box for me as well. And then seeing them on jobs, it was always something I really wanted to do. So selection process is when a selection comes up every couple of years or so, they'll put it out to everyone in the police force. Then you have to write a report saying as to why you think you're up to it. Based on that, they'll cull it down to a certain point. If you're selected to move to the next point, there's a barrier testing day, which is all minimum standards, push-ups, chin-ups, shuttle runs, beep tests, swim tests. So it's a long, exhausting day. So after the report stage and the barrier testing, they cut us down to 44, and then 44 started the selection week, which is held in Goulburn out in the bush. When we did it, we were in a big tent on stretchers, and Goulburn's freezing. They aren't too accommodating and try and do it in warmer months. When we were there, it was winter. You turn up nervous in your police uniform, and right from the very second you start, you get screamed at and beasted. And an ex-SAS trooper who left the military and joined the TOU, he actually wrote the selection course. It's affectionately known, if you want to use that term, as Hell Week, and it really is. It's just pushes you to your absolute extremes to see if you can get through it. It's every sort of test, like jerry can runs, dragging trailers up and down hills. Just the whole time you have a pack on, big pack marches, stretcher carries, just ridiculous swim assessments, but also a big part of it, they're testing your temperament for what you like. Try, fail, never give up. So you're going to fail. There was numerous times you just couldn't physically go on, but it's to see if you can push through that, regather yourself and go on. It was a long week, and the whole time you knew even if you finished it, there's a good chance you weren't going to be selected. The instructors were nice enough to repeatedly whisper that in your ear, that while you're here, you're not even going to be selected. Just, I know it's hurting, just go home. So there's mental games that go on as well. Then they're also testing aptitude when you're pushed to your extremes physically and mentally. Then they'll test you in firearms aptitude and searching buildings, everything. Under gas, we put in a gas tent and gas you to the point you can't breathe or see, and seeing how you react. And so they put everything into that week just to make sure they're getting the right person that they want. So the start of the week we started with 44, and by the end of the 7 days we were down to 14, and then from that they selected 10 of us. It's definitely a misconception that once you pass the selection that you're sort of in the TAU, which is definitely not correct. There was a bit of a break. They sent us back to our commands and let us know when we could start. I think it was about 6 months later I actually started. And that's when you start the year-long courses. And it's pretty much started in the same way they treated you on selection. It's just completely exhausting. You have to learn every weapons platform back to back. You have to do stress shoots and assessments on everything. You build up to method of entry and then CQB, so clearing large buildings and structures and entry into them. And you're building up to that in the first 6 to 8 months or so. With the TAU, we are actually the counter-terrorism response for the state of New South Wales. So that's why the TAU are sort of above and beyond, say, other American-style SWAT teams. We do all of the counter-terrorism courses. So we do vehicle and water-based training, so swim-up assaults on ships, land-based structures. I don't like to compare it to Navy SEALs training because it's nowhere near like that, but that's a similar sort of training we do. Helicopter operations, fast roping, deploying to water, all that sort of thing. Active shooter training. The list's quite extensive, and that really goes for probably another 6 months or so. So, yeah, being the counter-terrorism response for New South Wales, we have to be trained up in anything terrorism-wise. So aircraft assault, anything like that.
And once you're in there, and that's a full deployment, it's not like you're back on general duties and you just get called out. You're on that unit, and I would imagine on a day-to-day basis, a lot of what you do is ongoing training and that type of thing, but you would be, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd be on call 24/7.
Yeah, it's sort of an unwritten rule to an extent. You're always on call, and you can always be called in for, say, a job like Lindt. It wouldn't matter if you're on annual leave or whatever. You always, you know, there's potential to be called up for a big job like that. You're rostered on shifts. If you're not doing a job, you'd always be doing a lot of shift training, shooting nearly every day you're on. But yeah, and then there's on-call rosters and people who are always covering weekends, night shifts, all that sort of thing.
If you're looking at the police comparing it to the military, the TAU is like the police version of the SAS, really, isn't it? It's. I mean, their training may be different and what have you, but insofar as a policing role is concerned, that's the top of the tree.
Yeah, definitely. It's the tip of the spear. It's the top unit in relation to it. I get asked a lot about the SAS or the commandos and us in comparison, because a lot of the, trying to say it in a nice way, feedback or criticism was that they should have deployed TAG East or the commandos and stuff like that. Ultimately, we have different roles because we do anything down to suicide interventions where people got a knife and trying to stab themselves and others, but we also build up and do the same training to an extent that they do. They're obviously very competent at what they do. Mm. And I'd say in relation to Lindt, we were well and truly capable and able to do that sort of job.
And you were on this unit for around 13 years.
Yeah, by the end, yeah.
Ben, what I'd like to do is to highlight like a typical call-out for the TOU, the Tactical Operations Unit. Can I take you back to the morning of Good Friday, 2014? There's a job that you were deployed to in Thornlea. Can you just walk us through that?
Yeah, I was actually on call. As you can imagine, there's not too many operators on a Good Friday. But yeah, I got a call up at home. Well, when you're on call, you always take your kit bag, so you've got everything with you so you can respond. We're confined within Sydney CBD so we can react quickly. Yeah, I remember I was with my daughter that day, had to get a quick deployment, dropped her at neighbours and took off into the city. At the early stage, it was, I'd say it wasn't too concerning really. It was just sort of a run-of-the-mill job. We were informed there's an armed offender inside the dwelling, and at that stage he had his sister as a hostage inside. Police had turned up earlier, General Duties Police, requesting either he come out or talk to him, and he's fired something at them. They weren't sure what it was. So standard protocol, lock it down, remove people from houses around just to ensure their safety, and just to lock it down at that stage. I remember, because it was so far away from where I was, down near the Gong Way, getting all the way up to sort of North Shore. I was one of the later guys to arrive. There was another, I believe it was an armed robbery in progress happening, so they actually started sending me to the city to grab the armoured vehicle, and got called off before we could arrive. I'd just jump in quickly. So you were saying before that we're full-time. We do, the whole state is our responsibility, but we also have part-time operators. So they may well be doing general duties, detectives, anything like that, and then they can quickly respond from there, lock down a premises until we arrive. So we either get flow on there or drive all our vehicles there. I quickly rushed back there. I was allocated to the Alpha team, which is the entry team. And at that stage, there wasn't much happening. They hadn't had too much correspondence with the person inside. We were there for quite a few hours. There was nothing really to be too concerned about. We thought we'd heard crossbow or a bow potentially. We didn't really know much more than that. He'd locked it down so well we couldn't really see inside it. So there was a plan devised, DA, deliberate action, on how and when we were to go in. It didn't happen till, I think it was right on dusk. It was starting to get dark. So the plan was our entry team, our Alpha entry team, go in from the normal front door, and another team, the second entry team, go in from a lower level, smashing through. We got permission to execute it. The DA went forward, started to smash on the front door with the ram. It was heavily fortified, which we'd had no intelligence of that happening. We had a secondary entry point, which was a glass window in nearby. That was smashed out with a couple of guys on a ladder, and that was fortified as well. So the other team down below actually managed to get in. And as our operators are smashing on the front door, we had another operator starting the chainsaw to try and get in. And that's when we started hearing all the explosions inside, which was the other entry team deploying their sound and flash grenades. With that, the time you deploy one, it has 9 separate explosions and flashes. So there's a lot of bangs going on inside. We're trying to get comms with the other team. We're quite concerned. We didn't realise what was going on. Our breacher kept trying to breach the front door. Chainsaw wouldn't start, which was beyond frustrating at that stage. Rotated through 2 blokes or so with the ram. Eventually managed to get the front door in, and not only did the front door come down, but the whole door jamb and even some of the bricks just collapsed in. That's how well he had it all. He had it all bugled in, and heavily fortified. But to be honest, still at this stage, I wasn't too concerned. I knew they were throwing sound and flow. I didn't know what was going on. I was about 3rd or 4th in the stack, so I still only had my taser out at this point. Because of the permissions we had permission to use less lethal options. A taser is that. There were operators who were carrying a primary weapon if that was required too.
Did you know at the time he had a psychiatric sort of history, some mental health? And so you're going in thinking, okay, we've got an issue with a bloke. He's got perhaps having a bit of a psychiatric episode or something like that. I guess that's where your head is when you're going in. Yeah,
and we do a lot of those sort of jobs.
Of course.
A lot of people with mental health. Basically, in the TAU, we're deployed to jobs where anyone's armed and police on the scene are of the opinion that they're more than happy to use it on themselves, others, or other police. So we obviously have the training and resources to deal with it, and a lot of the time it may only be suicide intervention, which is definitely the sort of the bottom end scale of our work. But in having us deployed, it nearly always results in very minimal injury to the offender or any of the hostages or anything like that.
And mental health would be a common thread, I would imagine, through a huge percentage of those jobs that you attend.
Yeah, of course.
So you're in the house.
Finally in.
You're about 4 back in the stack. You got the taser. You've gained entry.
Yep. So actually in the stack, there was one guy in front of me, so I was only the second. It was pitch black dark at this stage, and because of all the stunning deployments, there was a lot of smoke, so vision was very minimal. Like I said, I still had my taser. The guy in front of me, he's peeled into the bathroom, and I continued on. Very weird layout, this house, and it would be too hard to probably explain it for this interview, but I kept pushing forward till the end of a partition wall. I can only see minimal from my taser light source, and just because of the smoke and how dark it was. I got to the end of the partition wall and turned and scanned, trying to work the layout of the room. From us, it was like a little landing, and then moving across, and there was rooms up the top, and the other entry team were coming in from the bottom story. The only way they could get up was to walk up those stairs and come around. And as I'm panning the room trying to get the layout, next thing I felt something whack me really hard in my right shoulder. It spun me around on impact. It was a huge impact, and it actually hit me just on the top of my ballistic vest. So it's immediate pain, whacked me. I spun around, and then I looked, and in the gyprock wall there's an arrow sticking out. So I knew within that second that the job got very real.
That was a crossbow.
A hunting bow, I believe, so I'm lucky it didn't just pierce straight through me. Yeah, you shoot those hunting bows through just about anything. But I think just because of the curvature of my shoulder and where it hit on my strap, I was lucky enough that I got a decent-sized bruise out of it. It just knocked me, and luckily I wasn't standing too heavily. And on that, I peeled back behind the partition wall, as you can imagine, and started screaming to the team. He's armed, he's got a bow, I've just been shot. Immediately put the taser away and pulled out my sidearm, my Glock. And from there, I can hear stun grenades still being deployed from the other team. I imagine that they'd probably, and know now, that they'd been getting hammered as well. From there, then there were calls by the team leader for our shield to come forward, our ballistic shield, like a bulletproof shield. It's come forward. I kept peeling out. I had my light source on and kept peeling out from behind the wall to try and... I still couldn't identify 100% where he was from. I think it was on a subconscious level, but each time I did, I felt something was happening, and I'd peel back, and I had arrows just whizzing past my head. I still don't know how I wasn't hit in the face with one, but... the shield finally come forward with the shield man, Dano, and the guy behind him, Imo, and I can see them out of the corner of my eye. I'm trying to show them where I believe it was with my light source, and out of the corner of my eye I see the second guy behind the shield, his head just jolt back severely, and he got hit with an arrow straight into his ballistic helmet, knocked his head right back. The shield we have is only small. I'm actually still not allowed to talk about the exact dimensions, but definitely not enough to curl up behind and feel safe about it. So he's tactically retreated behind me, is the term we'd use. From that, I eventually managed with my light source to identify he was in the furthest room away, and we eventually got some comms, so communication with the other team, who told us they'd obviously been getting bombarded. The other guy on the shield, so we had 2 shields, one on each entry team, champion bloke, he's trying to work out where it's coming from because they're getting bombarded downstairs. And that's when I made the call, follow my light source, and my light source is beaming across to where he was, and from talking to him after the incident, he's turned with his shield and looked, and as he's following the light source across to where he was, he's looked up, and the guy, the offender's literally leaning over the balustrade with a bow pulled right back, just about to shoot him in the face. And he's reacted quickly and whacked the shield up just in time, and it's bang deflected off the shield, and he had his Glock out at the time and managed to shoot him from a very hard position, as you can imagine, like downstairs, and he shot him in the hip. Then at that point we were sort of hoping that it was all over. There was loud groans, as you can imagine, but I was still looking, and within a couple of seconds, next thing an arrow went whizzing past my head. So I knew this guy was extremely ramped up and was definitely suffering from some quite severe mental health issues.
And visibility at this time with those stun grenades going, are we still in a smoky sort of a room? Have you got some clearer visibility, or it's still like...
No. Because it's just such a confined small space, there was a lot of smoke, and the other team only had 3, and they've been getting bombarded from the moment they made entry. And looking at them, their position later, there was just arrows sticking out of the wall everywhere, and they'd been copying it a lot even before we managed to make entry. Eventually, our team leaders sort of rallied us and said we got to go forward to get him, which we knew we had to do. I would say on your last point, I knew he was in the end room. I had my light source on him, but there was just not enough vision, because if I was certain it was him, I definitely would have taken the shot. And obviously, in those moments, I was hoping that there would be enough for me to be certain, but I knew there's a hostage in the house, so I needed to be very certain. And with so much smoke, there wasn't the opportunity. So but the team leaders rallied us. We had to move forward. We shield man in front, and then I believe it was Paulie. So I think I was third in the stack. I had my Glock. I didn't have a primary weapon like one of our M4s or anything. And the call was to move forward, and as you can imagine, moving forward, where every time even I've poked my head around, I'm getting an arrow whizzing past my head. So it was a big moment to push out from behind protection, and we had to move out. The landing continued for another couple of meters, and then down some stairs, and then managed to turn across to face him. So it felt like an eternity moving forward, just willing Paulie and the shield man in front of me to move faster, because I knew I was completely exposed. If he'd shot at me in that moment, I remember still trying to put my hand up in front of my face or something. Obviously would have done nothing. I could feel underfoot that it was very slippery. He'd set up numerous booby traps within it, and he'd poured olive oil all over the floor and the stairs to try and get us to trip and slip over. We managed to push all the way forward across the landing, down the stairs, and turn to face him on like the mezzanine level, which would then walk straight towards him. So back in the stack, it felt somewhat safer because you got the shield man in front of you. Then we came across, he'd tied endless amounts of ropes. He'd had furniture, everything. There was just everything he'd put there was to try and stop us from getting to him. That took a big effort. He had been firing on us in this time. Don't know how he didn't hit, but he was constantly firing. We later found out he'd actually made some homemade weapons, even homemade rifles, pistols, and he packed his own ammunition. So some of them were somewhat effective. One of the guys on the bottom entry team actually got shot, and it took a big chunk out of his cheek. So some of them were effective and others weren't so much. But hit you in the face or something, it'd still kill you. He was firing a lot of that during the time as well. Pushed forward, kept trying to get through, cutting ropes and ripping furniture out of the way, and eventually got to his room, and the shield man's pushing in. At that time, there was a lot of smoke in the room. I forgot to say part of our entry was for one of the operators from our team to run down and deploy a sound and flash grenade into his room, which was effective, which was a good throw because it's only a tiny window. But that had also set his bed alight. So there was just smoke bellowing out of his room by this stage. So already on top of our vision issues, we now had smoke bellowing out. Went into his room. I was behind the shield. I believe the second man in Paulie peeled left into the room. I started with the shield man, and out of the corner of my eye, I just heard this screaming, and he was he had like a tomahawk. Dano, the shield man, bravely turned and it's come down, and he's managed to stop it with the tomahawk. So that was a close call, as you can imagine. And as he's done that, I've reached around with my taser, reaching around the shield, and I saw his exposed neck and managed to crack him in the neck with the taser. That's when, he's obviously, the effects of the taser worked, and Dano and the shields pushed forward, and we tackled him, managed to get him to the ground, all whilst the bed's burning, the room setting alight. We got a couple of guys tried doing that, and even with 2 or 3 of us on top of him, he'd been shot, he'd been tasered in the neck. Like, he fought all the way to the end. Yeah, it was a big struggle. Eventually got him flexi-cuffed, and then we started calling for the paramedics to come in to treat him because there's blood, as you can imagine, all over the floor and everything. One of the guys did pull up his shirt and saw he'd been shot in the hip and was trying to apply a trauma bandage to it. I also noticed at this point that he had 2 big steel plates, obviously homemade, like a Ned Kelly sort of thing. I also should go back to the point where he's just appeared out of the black and the smoke and coming down with the tomahawk. He had like a big grinding mask, like flapped down. So he'd obviously been sprayed in the face or something before too. So yeah, he was full blown mad, that bloke.
Coming up, how does a police officer, and in particular a tactical operations officer, deal with putting their lives in danger as part of their day job? The term that comes to mind here, Ben, one you'd be real familiar with situations like this, is suicide by police. It's almost a situation where he's prepared just to go to the death type of thing, and no question. And from the time that you gained entry into that townhouse to him being restrained, what are we talking? 20 minutes, 10 minutes? Time takes on a whole different sphere too, I suppose, in that situation.
It was only a matter of minutes, I'd say.
Yeah.
And like you say, time does take on a whole different sphere. It was only a matter of minutes.
In that time, you've had numerous arrows missing you literally by centimetres, whizzing around your head. You've got them coming at you with a tomahawk, the whole 9 yards. Now, and this is just one job that you've attended. You're in this unit for 13 years. And although there's unique aspects to every job that you guys attend, you're often dealing with people when they're at that level, in that same sort of mindset that they're prepared to die for whatever it is that they're fighting for. You come away from that. Mate, you're not a robot, and you're trained to the hilt. But there are very few people who on a regular basis, other than perhaps, members of the armed services, who face that face-to-face or that prospect of being killed. It might be a lame question, but mate, how do you deal with that?
I'd say honestly, the police force do back then. And honestly, it's not much better now, but they would get you to see a psychologist. They do have some psychologists within the police force who I wouldn't suggest to the pick of the bunch, but yeah, they'll do that. But mostly, honestly, it's through being with your mates and dark humour, having a bit of a banter, but also being able to talk about it with your mates is it's a good way of processing it. I'd say even from the moment he was removed, that process began, like looking around, finding all of his big hunting bows, and there was just weapons and swords and knives and everything there, and then walking back through the actual scene with now the lights on and being a bit clear and seeing everything and seeing just the amount of arrows hanging out of the wall. And one of them was actually shot all the way through a hardwood timber balustrade, and I feel extremely lucky we didn't lose someone that day. It was a big job, and obviously we're trained well and more than capable of dealing with it, but yeah, I'd say we're still lucky to have got everyone out from that job. And even from the moment we went outside, we'd already started sort of joking about it, having a laugh about it. And then we went back to command post, and that's when all the investigations, everything start. But I did throughout my career, even in general duties too, you're exposed to a lot of trauma. For me, seeing dead bodies and all that sort of thing, didn't really sort of have too much of an impact. Obviously, infants and babies, that sort of thing, that always does have an impact on you, and did. But more so seeing in the moment of someone really hurting themselves or others especially, so whether that be stabbing or anything, when you see the actual trauma happening in front of your eyes or people dying in front of your eyes, that's the stuff for me that started to stack up. Another job at Enmore, a guy literally only a few metres in front was to be arrested, had a handgun and didn't take him too seriously, but next thing, pulled straight to the temple and bang, and just drops dead and bleeds out. So that sort of, I knew that was probably my first big one that I knew had sort of affected an impact on me, because I kept thinking about it for a couple of weeks, had some nightmares, but just locked it away. And jobs like that, jobs like Thornley, lots of suicide. You see people doing horrific things to themselves, or it was always the innocent victims. That was always the hardest, I think. It's a lot to take, and it's a lot to process, and obviously it didn't work out because I ended up getting PTSD and couldn't deal with it anymore. But yeah, there's a lot of things still there that I still think about.
There's something I want to go back to, Ben, because although the general members of the public, you mentioned this earlier, they don't have great knowledge about units like the TOU and things like that, but they see things on TV, whether it's a news report or it might be a TV show or something, and we see these blokes rocking up with all the gear, whether it's a riot squad, whether it's a SWAT team, whether it's a TOU. And there's almost it's like a robotic look about these blokes. And this is something that always struck me is people tend to forget that in behind all that. I look at this case here. You wind the clock back, you were with your daughter who's little, she was 2 or 3?
Yeah, she was, maybe 18 months or something.
I think you said in the book, and I had this real clear vision of it, you were packing a little Peppa Pig bag, you're right. Heading down to your wife was at work and you were going to have that wonderful time with your little one, and next minute you get the call, and, next thing you're in there and you're on full sort of combat mode. And I think this is something that it's good for people to hear about, because these are fathers, husbands, sons, brothers, and sisters, of course, that are going into these environments. And the other thing, of course, is not only do you go from dropping off your little one, giving her a kiss, I think you left her with the neighbours, and then you're on full, you just switch on. But after it all, you go back home and that little one runs up, and to her, you're her dad and stuff, and then you've just seen all this horrific stuff, but you've got to go home and switch back on to husband and dad mode, and that takes a toll too, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course, because you cannot take it home with you, and they don't deserve it. So very difficult to do that sometimes, especially after Lindt couldn't really do it. But yeah, and I've heard military guys talk about it, where they know they're going on, say, 4 or 6 month deployment. They know they do a build-up training. They know it's going to be constant for that, and then they've got to try and they've sort of given time to come back to normal. But I think with police officers, the whole trying to switch over so quickly, as you said, that is an example. I was with my daughter that morning, having Daddy Daughter Day, planned on going for a picnic and pushing her on the swings, and next thing I'm getting shot with arrows and blokes are bleeding out. So yeah, that's very difficult to try and make that transition, but it's something you really have to try and get on top of, and it's something I always made a huge effort to. And reality was the only way I thought I could do that was just to lock it all away. Another thing you were talking about, I wouldn't say all public, but there is a bit of a public misconception where they believe you're just big and strong, can deal with everything. And part of it is you can do that. But there's a person, there's a father, there's a son, there's someone behind the balaclava and the assault rifles, and that was a big part for me in why I wrote my book, just to tell the story, and the story hadn't really been told from the TAU's perspective, been told from, say, the hostages, or we knew about the police hierarchy's decisions, but just the people on the ground and every TAU operator that day who ran into the cafe are heroes, because we all 100% believed that he had a bomb, and the moment we ran in, we were all certain we were going to die, and we were doing that with the hope of helping or saving the hostages inside. So yeah, in essence, sacrificed ourselves in the hope to save other people.
As members of the public, it's impossible to know what men and women of the police force go through to keep us safe. My chat with Ben this week is a stark reminder of how grateful we all are to them for what they do. Ben's book is called Tiger, 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 and it's out now wherever you buy your books. This episode was produced by Dan Mullins with audio imaging by Lindt Cafe.